don't know where to begin. What I saw during the research was overwhelming. The oppression they faced was horrific. There's even a memory that a writer described. You won't believe it when you hear it. We will examine this prison, the sections inside, and the events that took place shortly. Here is Sidney Military Prison and the incredible truths. This is Sidneya Prison, located 18 miles north of Damascus. Another name for this place is the Human Slaughterhouse. It was built in the 1980s by the Assad regime in Syria. It was originally designed as a prison for the Syrian army and military prisoners. However, from the 2000s onwards, it became a place especially for holding political prisoners. During the Syrian civil war that began after 2011, this prison became a symbol of the regime's oppressive policies. The prison has a square-shaped outer area protected by high fences and an inner part that includes two main buildings, a storage maintenance room, and a structure for military personnel. The larger of these two buildings is where civilians brought in for various reasons are kept. The other building is mostly occupied by people of military origin, and it is a building where mass executions are carried out. Prisoners were brought to this building and executed en masse after a short and unfair judicial process. Executions were reportedly carried out secretly at midnight, with regime officials' approval. The name of the prison seems to have been chosen deliberately because the meaning of Sidneya is the place of hunters, or hunting ground. This alone is an indicator of how inhumane they are. They reveal their intentions even with the name of the prison. People who use their human rights to protest the regime suddenly find themselves here. Imagine inside, especially after it gets dark, there is no source of light. People standing in total darkness. They had serious skin problems because they couldn't see the sun, so they couldn't get vitamin D. The only way to see the light was for someone to come and open the door. Then more people came and more. In rooms where only 2 people could stay, 8-10 prisoners were crammed. There were no beds inside. They were sleeping on blankets spread on the floor. In fact, some were sleeping on the concrete floor because there were no blankets left. Toilet? It was being disposed of in a corner inside the cell. Sleeping in that cramped room with that smell must be the greatest harm that can be done to a person. But don't worry, they hardly ever went to the toilet because there was another way to break them down. Starvation. In images I can't show here, you could literally count everyone's bones without exception. Most of them lost their lives for this reason. Sleep at night. Due to the beatings of the prisoners and the subsequent moans, sleep wasn't really possible until you got used to it. According to what is told, if there is someone getting beaten in a cell, it was only a matter of time before it was your turn, because they wouldn't just beat one person and leave. Most of the time, belts and sticks were used during these beatings. Some would lose consciousness without even being able to scream after the first blow. This is such a prison that everyone inside doesn't know what will happen to themselves tomorrow, and they sleep knowing this. The person you talked to the day before may not be among you tomorrow. There was a trial entirely as they wished. A 3D design of this terrible prison was made while the Assad regime was in power. The information was taken from people who had been there for years, and the design was prepared accordingly. The biggest information obtained about the inside until the Assad regime collapsed was this 3D design. With this unique design prepared by the Forensic Architecture Research Center, we will learn not only about the sections of the prison, but also what happened inside. The prison is divided into 3 sections. It looks like a windy day. The lower parts of this section of the building contain the cells where people slept. Here in these 2-person cells, there were normally 4 or 5 times the number of people staying. Here is the actual image of one of those cells. This is the area they lived in. They spend most of their days just in this area. The back part is where they take care of their toilet needs. Some cells are larger than others, and again, dozens of people are held in the lowest standards here. The other part of the structure is the truly scary place. Torture parties are said to be held here. In this deserted section, the staff reportedly used a variety of materials such as electrical cables, metal rods, tires, and plastic tools during these horror parties. At the end of the structure shaped like a windmill, there was reportedly a canteen and a dining hall. Prisoners were sometimes brought here just for fun. However, there was no source of light, only the guards had a flashlight and they could only see in front of them. People apparently hated going to the cafeteria because the groups that came in together would bump into tables and fall, often injuring or breaking something. In Sydney, the cafeteria serves more than just food. One day, the water was cut off. The water was cut off for 3 days. People tried to draw water from dirty toilet hoses due to thirst. At the end of the 3rd day, an official only brought a bucket of water and left it in the cells. When this was shared, it was only about 1/3 of a glass of water. Imagine going without water for 3 days, only consuming 3-4 tablespoons in total. A sad situation has occurred in a cell. The water bowl they gave has suddenly burst or something similar happened. The water spilled on the floor, and those inside tried to drink by licking the water on the floor. The water outage happened again later. At the end of the 3rd day, one of them couldn't stand it and dared to shout for water. Everyone was surprised because the officials had scared them so much that no one dared to do this. Even when they were about to die, only one person had the courage. Then others joined him and everyone was shouting for water. Then from the pipes, the sound of water dripping began to come in a faint voice. Some were crying like a small child because they had access to water. The prisoners in Sydney were not just men. There were also women and children. Michel Kilo, a leading dissident thinker and writer from Syria, tells a tragic and hair-raising story about a woman who became pregnant by the officers while he was held in a prison in Sydney, and about her child.
Eventually, at 3:33 in the morning, of course, there was no clock with me, but I asked him what time it was. He led me 131 feet away, opened a can, and asked me to share a story about childbirth. From the man's story. A girl around 26, 27 years old. I saw when I was extremely scared. I was scared because it was about him, experience I have. That girl at home. The child is 4 or 5 years old. A beautiful and small
Tree.
Here from the villages. He said, is this subject to the ordinary people? I mean, she got very upset and scared, and I read The Revenge of the Family Industry, and I know this idea, light and dry, sky, star, and water and home, and then he explains more topics to him. But what he said lightly, then did he also say that secretly? I sang for him Rima al-Hindik and Mama Zaman Hagaya, among other works.
What conscience would keep that child and his mother there? What conscience wouldn't let those children see the light of day even once, or show them the trees or birds even once? If the devil were to take form, he could not oppress more than these people do. Interesting moments occurred after the Assad regime was overthrown. For instance, the captive women couldn't believe those who came to rescue them for a long time. They looked at them with eyes full of fear.
The scenes of horror we lived through for 6¼ hours, I swear I wouldn't tell them to my children or anyone's children.
We saw children there who had never seen the sun. Children who thought the world was nothing more than that small cell. Survivors are rejoicing like children.
There are 40,000 dead.
People were checking the register to see if their missing relatives were there. Assad shamelessly denies all of this.
3,000 brave men are gone, but the country's heavy burdens are still alive. Secretly angered, each of the interrogators reported to their guides in your prisons. They have each other's photos.
They are doing